Hey guys, and welcome to Industrial Automation. It doesn't have to. I'm Brandon Ellis, your host, and with me, of course, is my co-host, Miss Beth Elliott.
Well, hey there, Brandon.
And we've got a special guest. We'll get to you in just a second. But first, I want to say Happy
New Year.
That's
Woo!
right, yeah.
2024.
That's right. So, it's 2024. I hope everybody had a wonderful and safe New Year. And we're back
Yes.
in 2024.
I know.
We kind of tripped through 2023.
A little bit.
Yeah, so only 2 podcasts last year, but we're going to do more than that today. So we've got a pretty interesting episode today. I think one that is going to be pretty awesome. So go ahead and give us the title, Beth.
All right. So today's title is Industrial Automation. It doesn't have to disagree.
That's right, disagree. So what are we talking about? Well, honestly, we're talking about more cybersecurity and networking. So man, we've heard us talk about that quite a bit, but it's a big topic, and we're going to be getting into why that's a big topic. OT, operational technology, IT, information technology. Those 2 networks, we've heard OT-IT convergence. We've heard OT-IT isolation. We've heard competing philosophies, OT, the way they do things versus how IT wants them done and needs them done, and our inability to recognize each other's philosophical differences and the importance of those things. As I'm commonly saying, what's going to get a production engineer or controls engineer fired is not the same thing that's going to get the IT person fired, and vice versa. And unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, we want them to work to not get fired.
Yeah.
And so they have a second set of priorities. We're going to be talking a bit about that today. But we're also going to be kind of breaking cybersecurity down as far as plant security on both the IT, this is applicable both IT and OT, 2 primary goals. Avoid an attack, but then the second part is to recover from the attack. So what are we going to do? What can we put in place? What tools do we have on both IT? They've already got those tools for the most part. But at OT, we need the same tools shaped a little differently to avoid an attack on our side and do our part to complement IT. But also, if an attack occurs on our side, the OT side, we need to be ready to recover. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So it doesn't have to disagree. The complementing of IT by OT, having similar tools with different shapes. So introduce our guest. Everybody's waiting.
All right. So our special guest today is Kyle Frederick.
That's correct.
He is Siemens Industrial Network Consultant for the Southeast region. Kyle has been with Siemens for more than 6 years. He's driven with a customer-oriented focus and has a passion for helping others. Kyle has a special knack for transferring his technical knowledge, and so we're thankful that he's here today to share some of his knowledge about cybersecurity and networking. Welcome to the show.
All right, thank you.
All right. Welcome, Kyle. So, Kyle, you and I have talked a bit, but walk us straight into there. So I've been bantering on here about avoiding an attack, recovering from an attack. What is an attack?
An attack is where, well, as we've seen in the IT world or emails, simple as you clicking on the wrong thing, it downloading some type of malware or ransomware virus.
Yeah.
You know, they break them up into different categories now because it's become such an issue that either stays dormant or starts hitting your network, your devices, your servers, so that it can disrupt, stop, or halt your production. And not to say IT is not necessarily production as in what we think in the OT or factory space. Production as in sending out emails or being able to do video calls and different things like that.
Yeah.
So it's there to, just like a virus, to attack and to halt what is supposedly supposed to happen in your environment naturally.
Well, and I've been in lots of conversations, and of course for many of our listeners, a lot of them are plant managers, engineering managers, plant presidents, whatnot, and they're not really they may or may not be down on the technical level of things, but one of the things that I hear the most is when it comes to the manufacturing floor, well, that's not on the internet.
Right.
But more and more today, it is connected to the office network. And so that's what we call that IT-OT convergence, because we have to get data about moving data from the enterprise level, which is where the data servers and repositories are. That's what creates all the things that cause a plant to really run. The pie charts, the graphs,
SAP,
all the ERP systems and all that kind of stuff. So all the planning, all the production planning, a lot of that now is not just come down to the machine and type it all in at the machine side. We have to pull that from upstairs to downstairs and then give reports back to the upstairs side. So there has to be a connection. The day of my plant floor is not, we call that air gapping, it's not on the internet, is not a do-all, wear-all preventative step, especially when you have folks working remotely, when you have contractors coming in, connecting in their PCs that have not been through your IT group's critical virus protections and malware protections, things of that nature. And also, if you have an employee who's working hybrid in a hybrid role, goes home, plugs a USB drive into their PC at home or takes their work laptop home, and now it's outside of the protection of your IT group, and you bring that back in, plug it into a system, even on the OT side, and now all of a sudden you've broken the air gap. And then, of course, there are cellular-based vectors into the plant where sometimes plants are paying companies, to OEMs and machine builders and whatnot, to put a cellular-based system to bypass the IT and allow a vector into the plant. All of these are potential ways to get some type of malware or ransomware into the OT side. Now, we've heard of viruses, malwares, phishing from emails, but is that happening? How honestly, how much of a threat is that? If I'm the plant manager, how much am I really? I hear all this stuff. How much am I worried, Kyle, about that coming down on the plant floor?
You're really worried because before, phishing was more targeted.
Yep.
It was targeted against government, municipalities, specific things that could cause, a major splash per se.
Yep.
Now it's become a industry where they're getting paid.
They're getting paid big.
They're getting paid big.
Yeah.
Where before in the IT realm, if you did a ransomware and they held your email server for ransom, your IT had a backup, and you could probably run the company still without having an email for many hours to possibly many days.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you hit the floor,
yep,
and then you stop production, through either your IPC, SCADA systems, whatnot. Just think of what that floor manufacturing stopped, that process being stopped, causing that plant per hour compared to the ransomware.
Yep.
The percentage becomes a lot higher to pay out that ransomware if you do not have what the steps for recovery and recover quickly.
Yep.
You being in the system integrator role, somebody comes to you and says, okay, I need this PLC died. And, what are the steps to recreate that? Mm-hmm. Or this IPC died that has still Windows NT on it.
Yeah.
Because of the OT environment where, it's running, so we're not going to touch it.
Yeah.
And rebuilding servers from scratch.
So let's talk a bit about that. The competing philosophies. You just mentioned one of those, Windows NT. Now, for those that might not know, that's a very old.
I didn't know what that
Windows
was.
operating system. Very
it's
old.
one of the first Windows servers ever to come out.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Back late 90s, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So Windows NT, but you would probably never see an NT server running on the IT side on the office networks and things like that. They
won't allow it.
Yeah, they won't allow it. It's not secure and all these kind of things. But how comparatively the philosophies, I mentioned the philosophies of IT doesn't match the philosophies of OT. So the philosophy of IT versus OT, what are some of the differences in those philosophies?
Well, just mention the Windows NT. Why would you have a Windows NT server still running?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe you have a specific software that is running a specific process in your factory,
mm-hmm.
and either that company went out of business or doesn't develop that software anymore or hasn't updated that software anymore. what do you do?
Or you have a plant manager, plant president that says that thing's working great.
Hasn't given me any
no issues. Don't touch it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because if you do touch it and you interrupt the factory process, how long is it going to be till you get it up and running in a stable format again?
Yep.
You don't want to risk it.
You don't want. Again, it's all about risk.
Yeah.
And of course, being back from my systems integration machine building days, and Alan being a production engineer and whatnot, when you get that machine on the floor, you go through your site acceptance testing, which includes quality checks. Especially if you're in the pharmaceutical world, you're doing validation, software validation steps, things of that nature, which are FDA required steps. Once you get all those checked off, you don't touch it. Mm-mm. And if you do touch it, you've got to do them all
steps again. Yeah.
And so it's very expensive to make changes. So we, on the controls engineer side, we're used to, once it's in place, unless there is a good reason, we do not make changes. How does that compare to the the IT world?
Well, IT, we've all seen it on the IT side where we're getting pushed down updates, even in our Windows operating system, weekly.
Yeah.
So, if it does interrupt something, it isn't stopping production.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nuisance. It's a headache. Even in IT systems, they rate it. Okay, is this just a nuisance, a headache?
Mm-hmm.
Is this stopping me from doing specific parts of my job, or is this stopping me from doing my job altogether?
Yeah.
On the OT side, it's only one answer typically.
Yeah.
It's stopping.
It's stopping. It's preventing us to move forward and preventing production. But let me make this point. That's not taking away from the importance of the updates that IT needs to do.
Correct.
So we're all fighting a battle. Everybody in the plant on the IT side and the OT side are fighting a battle. IT's job is to keep the email servers up and all the communications and the data streams flowing, the databases online and all that kind of stuff. And oh, by the way, no one from taking control of them and forcing us to pay a penalty. OT's job is defending against any kind of downtime event and anything that's going to keep from making production, to keep from making the truck, to fulfilling the orders. They're fighting another battle as well. We need each other.
Absolutely.
But IT's constant updating is not just because IT hates OT. It's because it's what their job requires. Because they are at the they are at the edge of, not the edge. I shouldn't say that, there is an edge, but they're
at their front wall.
They're at the front lines because they are facing the outside world. 100%. They're the wall of the castle that everybody's shooting the arrows and the spears are hitting. And they have to deal with that every day. So I don't want us to take away from the importance of what they are. And that's the beauty of what we're talking about with the Siemens products today. Siemens has taken the stance to not just say we're focused on OT because we like OT and we don't like IT. They're saying because OT needs the tools that are so important and the products that are so important to IT, if OT can have those same tools and complement the stuff that IT is doing to defeat those spears and arrows that are hitting the outside wall, to make sure if one happens to get over the wall and land in the OT world, IT's okay. We've got the same stuff, the same technologies in place, although our technologies look a little different because the need's different.
Correct.
So walk us a bit through some of that with Siemens with their preventative steps. Let's start with that, the preventative side.
So one of our main cybersecurity guys keeps on saying it's not about product necessarily, it's about process.
Yeah.
So some of the easy steps is process based. So backup and recovery.
Yeah.
And not only backups, but testing, which is a big change. I mean, how many times have we done backups, but tested those backups to make sure that they recover properly?
Yeah. So
that when we're in that recovery phase and we restore that backup, will it work?
It's a seamless transition.
Yeah, because if we restore a backup, but the backup is corrupted or it doesn't work properly
What's
or
the point?
whatnot, what's the point of backing
Yeah.
up?
So
And IT does that
regularly. It's part of their backup routine.
Exactly. I was a system integrator. I always heard back up your PLC program, but I never heard to restore it and
Make sure
test
it'll
it.
go back down.
Yeah.
That's smart. Yeah.
So that's one of the most simple steps, and it doesn't cost anything.
All right.
But it's overlooked. I bet.
It is overlooked.
Yeah.
It's an overlook, and it's almost a maintenance process. And so, all right, so we've been talking about the avoiding of attack or preventative steps, and now you're moving us into not just preventative, but preventative as far as preparing for recovery.
Correct.
And you have to do both sides. Cal and I were talking earlier, and he used the analogy of defense versus offense. I think that's a great analogy. He and I are big college football fans. So your defense keeps it out, but if we have somebody penetrate and score, then we need to put an effective offense in place to get the ball back on the other side of the field and get it in the end zone again. And so that's where the recovery comes into play, and that, I agree, is not something that we necessarily have the tools for in place, just out of the box. Here you go, or these are available kind of tools. So how does Siemens focus? Tell us a little bit about Siemens OT focus with some of their products and what products we're seeing to make those things a reality.
Well, so you have a lot of the tools again in the IT. So one of your aspects of ease of creating a cybersecurity plan. One is backup. Two is asset inventory. We all know about asset inventory with our PLCs, our I/O, our drives, but what about our asset inventory on our network switches?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of network switches do we have? Are they managed? Are they unmanaged? What firmware version are they?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have risks inside them? Can we just upgrade the firmware to avoid those risks? So asset management within the networking arena. So we do have something that can help us, which is Cynic NMS, which is network management software.
Yep.
So that does both monitoring. So you can monitor and diagnose the networking, not necessarily just the switches and not just necessarily Scalent switches, the Siemens switches, but you can do third party and you can do Profinet. So anything with pretty much a Profinet port, you can monitor.
Yep.
And so that gives you an overall of the network.
And you're monitoring what exactly?
Port loading.
Okay.
So you can actually trend a port to see how much loading it is and if it's been increasing. Because sometimes, let's say you plug a new device into a network switch. Well, it adds loading to that network switch. And if there's a lot of broadcast traffic and stuff like that, it could cause that switch's memory to be more and more utilized until that switch just doesn't send any data across.
Yeah.
Or a server that is hitting a single port and that switch is getting overloaded. So maybe you got to move that server, and without that diagnostics of that port increasing, you wouldn't know how to remedy this traffic issue or this
or where the source was.
That's what I was going to ask. Okay.
Yeah.
So
you can analyze the network a bit better. It's a graphical tool for analyzation.
Correct.
And so bandwidth. So let's not get too deep in the weeds, but bandwidth equals how fast things talk and how reliably. And so again, on the IT side, they're very bandwidth savvy. But on the OT side, I used to have a joke: how does a controls engineer upset an IT admin? Just say, can't we get just a faster computer?
Right.
You can't. We need to be cognizant of the things, because honestly, they've got it down.
Well, the big thing is IT has learned to architect a network.
Yeah.
Where OT,
it's just pieced together.
It's just, there's an extra plug right there.
Yeah,
I can plug it in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where can I find another port?
Exactly.
I remember.
Well, you got to get it done.
You
got to
gotta-
get the job done.
You got to get it done. You got to make the deadline for sure. I remember having a conversation with someone who was in the networking world, a manufacturer years ago when I was, again, machine building. And I said, you got to understand from our perspective, a switch is just like a fuse or a circuit breaker. We just first of all, it needs to snap onto DIN rail and not in a 19-inch rack. It needs to take 24 volts DC as supply power and not 110 volts AC. And then it just needs to work when I plug it in. I shouldn't have to set anything up and all this kind of stuff. Of course, all those switches were unmanaged switches. We just needed them to work. We didn't know. I remember myself years ago, I didn't know, I just knew it would work, that I would have multiple subnets running through the same unmanaged switch. It'll work, but it's not efficient. And so, as I've gotten to know IT folks and IT admins and understand more, what their craft is, I start realizing that was really dumb.
It's a different type of engineering.
Well, but again, if you go back just a few decades, that's back when we thought, man, a gigabit hard drive, who's ever going to need more memory than that? And even before that, when I remember my first computer had 14K, and I was like, wow, that's a lot. That's 14,000, bits, and I just or bytes, and I just like, wow, that. Who needs more than that?
Well, remember going from dial up to like DSL.
Yeah.
And how am I ever going to slow this network down?
Yeah. It's just in our lifetime for sure. I mean, we've seen the onset of the internet. So in the plant world, so what does that mean? Bandwidth and that kind of stuff. What makes that important? How does that equate to dollar bills coming into my pocket versus going out from the company's standpoint? If you're not talking effectively, if your data streams are overloaded, your switches are overloaded, then now all of a sudden you have delays in data. It could affect production. It could cause faults with controllers and things of that nature. And that's another philosophical difference between IT and OT, is how much of a fault, if you will, or a delay of data do we feel like is catastrophic versus the IT folks feel like that it's catastrophic.
Yeah, typically on an OT, anything above 50 milliseconds is a lifetime.
Yeah.
And
you're going to have faults at that point.
You're going to have faults. Your I/O is not going to be your distributed I/O is not going to be communicating to your centralized PLC. Your motion control definitely will not work properly. Where in the IT world, half a second is unbelievable response time.
Yeah.
And they're great for a half a second response time.
Right, because what are they tasked with? And guys, let me say this. I want everybody to go out and get an IT degree that likes IT, but it's the toughest position, I think. It is a position that needs to be respected, because honestly, we don't think about you guys unless we're upset.
Yep.
Because our email's not working, or our streaming's not working, or our hard drive's crashed or something. And we probably should have, I'm sure there's an IT network admin's day.
Oh, there is. There's a day for everything.
Yeah. But if you see that, you should buy, a Reese cup or something for your IT admin, because think of how many days your email does work and the network is up.
Yeah.
But if you're right, if you're in a video streaming video conference and if you don't have email for a couple of days, that's probably pretty catastrophic. But if you're in the middle of a streaming call or something and all of a sudden the video freezes for half a second and then comes back, we just kind of overlook it. It's a nuisance, but it's not going to kill us.
Where an OT, a plant will shut down.
You'll shut down the whole plant, yeah. Because what's happening there? So the difference is, in the OT world, when machines are running, it's not just communications to say you have data, I have data. It's keeping, especially when you get on what's called a field bus network, which you talked about I/O. So there's the CPU, which, to use the human body as an analogy, is the brain. And then you have remote I/O. Well, that's all your
sensors.
Your sensors. Well, the inputs are sensors. That's all your nerves. So your nervous system. The outputs are your muscular system. If if the brain loses connection to either of those in the human body for even a little bit, because there's another muscle, it's called the heart. That's an output device, right? Mm-hmm. And if the brain loses access to the heart, none of us want to go down that road, not even for a millisecond. And so the machines are working the same way. And if that does happen, if you do have a hiccup where the brain loses connection to the heart, then that's when the body does some fault event. You're down, and now all of a sudden we're having to maintenance.
We're in recovery mode.
Yeah.
we're in maintenance at that point. And so a blip across the network, that ties directly to things like network loading, switch loading, and things of that nature. It's not this. I mean, of course, there's always the forklift ran over the fiber network, or cut the cable or something like that. Those are also interruptions, but those are kind of catastrophic events. Now, so that's keeping up with what's going on with your network. What if, God forbid, there is a cybersecurity event? And by that I'm talking about maybe a virus, maybe malware, but let's go all the way to the end. We're ransomed. So right. Now all of a sudden on the OT side we're ransomed. First of all, getting ransomed, you mentioned earlier on the IT side. If you get ransomed on the IT side versus getting ransomed on the OT side, isn't it becoming a bit of a
badge of honor?
Badge of honor to if you were ever able to interrupt OT versus just IT from.
Well, it's not only a badge of honor; it's millions of dollars.
Well, potentially,
so, potentially. Wow. And again, what we talked about is the high percentage that will get paid out.
Yeah.
Because a plant manager is going to look at, okay, what is the ransom versus
what's my downtime cost?
What's my downtime, and how long is it going to take me to recover from this ransom manually?
And everybody I've talked to has said, don't pay it. Don't pay it because you pay it and it may the fix may not come, but you're also saying, okay, now we found somebody, and all that goes out and for money, and you become a target. But it's a tough thing to be. So how do you get past that? So if IT gets ransomed, what's their normal next step?
Normally, once they get ransomed, they try to isolate it so that it doesn't spread. So that's when you start seeing the emails come out. You start seeing networks actually start shutting down so that it doesn't spread it from server to server.
In an automated way.
Yeah. So that if it hits one server, two servers, they got the backup. It'll take them maybe a day to rebuild those servers and be back up and running.
Back up as if it never happened.
Yeah. So and that's the thing that trying to do an OT.
Which is why you're saying that OT is not just a badge of honor, it's expensive. And because OT is not necessarily operating under the same mindset and processes as IT. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
So they're built for the recovery step in IT. Why aren't we in OT?
Again, up and running. So, we got to keep things up and running. So our priorities are different. Our priorities aren't set for that. But that's where Siemens, we've actually started. It's not necessarily a product, even though it has a product name, but it is a solution called CyberProtect, I believe. And what it does is it interacts with those either IT or OT-based IT tools with your syslogs or intrusion detection systems to communicate to a PLC that there is a local threat within the factory. Because one is being notified. If you don't know that there's a threat, then
you can't act on it.
So then the PLC, depending on the customer's requirements and workflows and stuff like that, the PLC will start isolating automatically. Oh. And not necessarily shutting things down, because you don't want to shut things down in a production floor, but you do want to isolate, and you want to basically tighten restrictions on communication. So with our security devices, we have digital inputs, and you can control those digital inputs to have, let's say, a low threat security profile and then a higher threat security profile. So when it does see that, the PLC, the brain, will communicate to these security devices to basically start locking down communications. And this will either isolate or just prevent that virus from spreading.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it sounds a lot like what you just described from the IT, that the IT folks are doing. And so this is where Siemens comes into play. And when you said PLC, Siemens is, we talked about the last podcast a bit with Matt Wagner. We were talking about drives and some of the new drives and their capability, and we got into cybersecurity. And so that's one of the things that Siemens, honestly, I told this story before, when we were trying to decide if we were going to become a Siemens distributor, I really was investigating them a lot. And one of the things that really caught my eye and impressed me was their commitment to OT-based cybersecurity, to give us the tools, not just a really cool managed switch that can do VLANs and handle tunnels and VPNs and that kind of stuff, routing. I mean, honestly, IT will tell you they've got that. The difference is how they integrate those products in with their other products, their PLCs, their drives, their HMIs, their even down to remote I/O, so that they can take a stance, basically, and not give a nod to the IT guys and say, we're going to do the same thing as far as intrusion detection and whatnot. So what's this really mean? Intrusion detection warns the other devices, and this is not a plug. This is just what is available right now. If they're Siemens devices, the newer devices that are coming out now, those devices are intelligent enough to know what that means, and to make evasive moves to begin to isolate the threat and secure it.
Yeah, Siemens is, I believe, the first manufacturer to develop not just network switches or whatnot, but their full product line off of the IEC 62443 standard, which is a standard to have defense in depth or security in mind when developing each product individually.
And that's the other thing, talking about the recovery on the OT side. Okay, so we were talking a bit about that. Step one, number one, do your backups, timely backups. That's almost a preventative maintenance step. I mean, it should be handled in a similar fashion. Number two, test your backups. That's a new step. I don't know that we've done that before. It's like having fire drills.
Right.
Even in plants, you have fire drills and tornado drills and meet at, spot blue square or whatever. We go through that. We practice those things. We need to practice recovery because the goal is for you all not to spend money paying ransom people. The goal is for you to, just like IT honestly is going to do, they're going to shrug it off. They're going to say, we're not going to pay that. Give us, 12 to 24 hours and we're back up as if it never happened.
Right.
And they just move on. We need to be able to do the same thing in OT, and Siemens has given us a way to do that. Intrusion detection is really one that I think is really cool.
It is.
To be able to have that communication and essentially act on it, or be able to act on it, because at a not I got an email that there's something going on. I mean, certainly you can get an email, but the PLC was pre-configured to act in this way. The drive was pre-configured to act in this way. All these things were pre-configured to do this in one ecosystem, because they are now architected just like IT architects their systems.
Well, and just think about this also. 20 years ago, safety.
Yep.
You thought about safety.
Yeah.
Everybody did, because they didn't want to lose a limb or whatnot. But was it a plant-wide thought. Not really till something happened. Until, you know, recently, safety is mandated.
Yeah.
Either through the company's motto or insurance or monetary, you know, lawsuits and stuff like that. That's right where we are with OT and cybersecurity.
Yeah.
We're talking about it. Companies are contemplating it. Insurance companies are looking at mandating it. And so we're in that stage where safety was, you know, back 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, unless you came from a government organization. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's a great analogy. I remember 15, 20 years ago, we didn't have safety monitoring relays. I don't remember any kind of a safety PLC. We might have done a hardwire circuit for an e-stop, but that was it. And or we would just run it through a PLC and do it in code. You can't do any of that now.
No.
Is it safer than no safety? Sure. Is air gapping safer than no protection whatsoever? Sure. But it's not going to be allowed. Especially, you mentioned insurance companies. And so insurance companies now are either sending you a letter to say, we're not covering, you know, these things, acts of God, acts of war, and ransom attack. So the plants need to be insured for this. They're looking to be insured for this because it can be a costly measure if you have to recover. Because now that's the other big difference. If you're without emails for 24 hours, what is the overall cost to the plant versus if your production's down for 24 hours? What's according to your industry? In automotive, they count that anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 a minute.
Goodness gracious.
Numbers get up real high real quick in
Yeah,
the
they
IT
do.
world.
They do. And so a lot of insurance companies are saying if you want cybersecurity coverage, ransom style coverage for the plant, including the plant floor, you have to have these things, this hardware, this software in place. Siemens gives you that avenue. And honestly, I haven't seen it from anybody else.
Well, not only just that avenue, but designed from an OT perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, the OT philosophy is not just hey, that's what we like. It's what we have to have because we can't handle some of the same bumps in the road that IT can handle with grace.
Or even just boil it down even simpler to, will your plant floor engineer learn Cisco language?
CLI, yeah,
CLI.
command line interface.
Will they? Yeah, will they? I mean, we know the aspects of, you know, control engineers going from ladder logic to structured text and how painful that is.
And it's no different. Yeah,
right.
I'm an old DOS guy, so I handle it a little better. But yeah, command line interface is the first language of most network admins. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, controls engineers want visual. We want visual stuff. Yeah.
I mean, look at TIA port. It's all drag and drop. A lot of drag and drop.
Yeah.
You know, we want to see that visual aspects.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, drag that drive into my network and it automatically be connected and communicating.
Exactly. That's Americans are lazy, and I'm one of them. And especially when it's something we're not experts on.
Well, yeah, we're not necessarily late. We just have a lot of different priorities.
Well, we do
and
have
adding an extra.
I'm lazy.
Yeah, it's adding that extra. Do I really need to, or do I really want to? Just like with the plant floor, you know. Will this have its return on investment?
Yeah.
You know, me learning Cisco CLI, how much return on investment does that have on my production floor?
Yeah.
Versus me learning PLC language or drives or basics on electricity or motor troubleshooting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the whole deal. Pneumatics, hydraulics, the whole deal, right? This is something that we have to do, and I don't care who you are. If there's an easy button, we like to push it. But we have to be confident that the easy button, when we push it, is going to do what we think it's going to do, and it's going to work. And again, there's probably products out there that present themselves as easy buttons. But and we on the control side will push them. Cellular modems and things of that nature, we'll push them. But that doesn't necessarily make IT's job easier. In fact, it makes their job more difficult. And they are justified, it's justifiably so, that they have to arrest those because they get fired if any malware or virus comes into the plant. They don't get fired if you don't make the truck, but they do get fired if something comes into the plant the way it shouldn't have.
And just a little sidebar, just what I thought of for a light bulb moment. Wireless in an IT environment. Pretty simple. We've all done it.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've done it at our houses. We've done it in office buildings.
Cars.
I mean, Wi-Fi.
You're right.
Now, because we don't have the noises and all the other electrical interferences, steel, Wi-Fi in an industrial environment is an engineered solution. Not only because of that, but also because what we talked about before, data. Mm-hmm. I go from one Wi-Fi access point to another. I get a little bit of a blip. It might hang up my phone call, something like that. I call them right back. Yeah. Again, on, you have your AGV, automated guided vehicle, going from one wireless access point to another. Oh. Can it recall, It can't forget where it is. Exactly. It's got to, you're right. So, it's just, again, another aspect or a light bulb moment where the difference between IT and OT in a real world environment. Yep. And where we've created those easy buttons in IT because it's an easier environment to deal with.
Yeah, it's very complex on the OT side.
Industrial environments are different.
OT is less forgiving. And IT is largely human. So we probably need to be more forgiving at times, but we can be more forgiving than on the OT side, as far as the AGVs you bring up, the robots, the machines, the PLCs, and all this kind of. They have to only run one way, and if anything's out of kilter, they can't say, "Well, I'm in a pretty good mood today. I'm just going to ignore that." They have to shut down because now we're getting into a safety standpoint, and so it's a different philosophy. It's a different operating thing. Well, Kyle, listen, this has been fantastic.
Great conversation.
Beth's going to have all kinds of stuff to...
Yeah, we'll have links in the show notes to all of the good stuff that... Yes.
Good nuggets.
Yes. So people can learn more. And then if anybody wants to have Kyle come out to their facility and talk to them, then you call us and we'll hook you up with Kyle. How's that sound?
Or maybe we'll do a big webinar.
Exactly.
And a lot of people at once, So certainly this is something that is important to everyone that's in the manufacturing. And, of course, industrial automation, that's what we talk around here. Hey, lads, I want to thank you for sticking with us through 2023 and now into 2024. Remember, if you want to work with us, give us a call, 865-409-1555, or our website, www.ellitek.com. That's ELLITEK.com. All right. We ready to wrap it up?
Yeah, sure thing. We're going to have more than 2 episodes in 2024.
That's right.
I can promise you that.
Yeah. Well, you've got a voice for podcast.
You've got a great voice.
Thank you.
Kyle, I do appreciate you taking some time with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Hey guys, thanks for checking out today's episode of Industrial Automation It Doesn't Have To. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, make sure you give us a rating that's pretty doggone high, and do that everywhere you listen, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We'd really appreciate it. Also, don't forget about our website. That's www.ellitek.com. That's ELLITEK.com. If you want to reach out to us there, you can fill out our contact form. We'd appreciate it. Also, you can email us at info@ellitek.com. And certainly for those of you that still like to dial the phone, give us a call, 865-409-1555. We'd love to hear from you.